I'm not your echo. I'm the one who ends the voice. A human girl became the key to galactic evolution. They called it a death belt. Near Seta, a plasma-charged stellar ring, banned on all navigation charts since the fall of Station Vetra. That didn't stop Eden's Council from launching survey vessel EL-734 cycles ago. Eris Lorne, graduate researcher in interstellar genosymbiosis, had not volunteered. She had been assigned. The mission collects samples of anomalous energy life signatures surrounding the Nair anomaly. The logic, as always, was simple. Humanity would either classify it, colonize it, or kill it. But on day 5 at 1632 ship time, the anomaly struck first. No alert, no warning, just a cascade failure in the magnetic field stabilizers, followed by a searing blast that vaporized every crew member above Deck 7. Eris, already descending into the cryolab, survived only because she had chosen that hour to retrieve her notes by hand, disliking automated backups. Her skin blistered from the flare-back. Her left thigh caught fire. And yet somehow she emerged, staggering, eyes pale with shock, into silence. Silence that roared. The wreck drifted like a ruptured shell, sparks curling in weightless arcs, when the Near found her. They did not speak, not then. 9 figures towering, scaled in living crimson, each nearly 3 meters tall, bodies wreathed in coiling heat that did not burn the torn metal around them. They moved in unison, like a single thought stretched across 9 vessels. One of them reached for her. She should have died. Contact with their plasma layer was instant annihilation for all recorded species. But when the red-lit claw touched her throat, nothing. The soldier flinched, drew back. Eris coughed blood, raised her head. "Am I dead?" The soldier said nothing. They did not destroy her. They carried her, wrapped in a containment veil, through void space in a black vessel shaped like a fang. Inside, air tasted of metal and burning stone. They were near. A warrior race engineered by flame-born technologies lost to even their own ancestors. Their social order was vertical, rigid, fanatical. Purity through hierarchy, worship through heat. Plasma was their god. Energy was their flesh. Their blood could slice steel. Cain, supreme flame-bearer of the Near, met her at the Tower of Iron, where prisoners went to vanish. He was young, not by age but by cycle, barely into his 3rd decade, yet his name echoed with fear. Cain had ruled since the Trial of 9 Hearts, where he had incinerated his challengers with bare hands at 15. His body shimmered with red-orange plasma scales that reacted to threat and mood. When he approached her cell, even the guard stepped back. She looked up, lips cracked, voice raw. "Are you going to kill me?" He didn't answer, just stepped closer. Their eyes locked. She saw in his expression not curiosity, but something stranger, hesitation. Cain reached out, touched her arm. Nothing. No searing. No hiss of vaporized skin. His eyes narrowed. "What are you?" She didn't know, yet that question kept her alive. He broke protocol, refused to allow her execution. Whispers spread. A human immune to the flame? Some called it a sign. Others, heresy. One counselor said, "She should be ash, and yet she stands." Cain said only, "She is not ash. She is unknown. The unknown must be understood." In Near society, deviation from law was treason, but Cain was law, and his decision to spare Eris would ripple across the hierarchy like cracks in iron. The Tower of Iron was not a prison. It was a verdict carved in alloy. Rising 600 meters above the volcanic ridge of Arkar, its spires scraped the clouded sky like the broken bones of forgotten titans. Within Near society, it served a singular, sacred role, the site where anomalies were unmade. Criminals were punished elsewhere. The tower was reserved for the forbidden, biological heresies, failed experiments, or those who survived things they should not. Eris belonged to all 3. She was held in Cell 9. That number meant nothing to her, but everything to them. 9 was the sacred numeral of collapse, a symbol reserved for recursive death. Few in Near history had been assigned it. Fewer still had walked out. In fact, none. No prisoner had ever exited the tower by foot breath, or will. Her detainment was kept secret. Even among the hierarchy, only the council and Cain were aware. The reason was clear. Her existence defied doctrine. Plasma did not spare. Plasma consumed. For a human to endure it, and worse, to show no visible mutations, was not only anomalous, it was dangerous. The test began on cycle 1. They called it observational extraction, but in practice it was invasive molecular probing. They measured her resistance to plasma, then forced controlled exposure, bare skin to molten heat, corneal contact with plasma light, bone marrow samples under microscalpels. Her skin blistered, then healed. Her pulse spiked, then stabilized. No one could explain it. She should have been screaming. Instead, she stared through the red-tinted glass of the cell with calm that unsettled the observers. She refused their food, spoke rarely. When questioned, she countered. "You call me heresy," she said once, "but what if your fire is broken?" Her tone wasn't hostile. That's what made it worse. It was clinical, like a researcher labeling phenomena. Cain visited her on cycle 3, alone, no guards. He entered the cell, unarmed, a risk that had no precedent. He sat across from her, watching. She did not flinch. "Why do you not scream?" he asked. "Why do you burn?" she returned. That was the first time he looked away. Each visit after that, he came closer, spoke longer. He never touched her again, but he studied her. Not like a jailer watching prey, but like one organism studying another. One night, she scraped equations onto the floor, using char from her meal tray. Molecular diagrams, cross-species compatibilities. "You're mapping my genome," he said. "No," she replied. "I'm mapping mine. Yours is already too loud." He frowned. "Loud? The plasma in you. It pulses with pain. You've taught your body to obey, but not to be quiet." And for a moment, something inside him did go quiet. Plasma in the near was not symbolic. It was vital. It coursed through channels beneath their skin, bound to their nervous system, regulated by rage, belief, and command. For Cain, it had always been a force of conquest and control. But around Eris, its rhythm changed, slowed, softened, not extinguished, but calmed. He tested it. On cycle 7, he placed his palm against the obsidian wall separating their chambers. She did the same. A faint glow bled into the stone. Not red, not white, but a muted blue. That had never happened before. He withdrew, unsettled. Later, in private, he summoned an elder seer and asked, "Has plasma ever softened in proximity to foreign minds?" The answer came slowly. Only once, in the time before speech, and it destroyed us. Cain said nothing, but for the first time in years, he felt something impossible. Doubt. Eris first suspected something about Cain's past when he winced at the word velos. Not visibly, not the way most beings showed pain, but with the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth, a shift in the plasma hue across his throat, from crimson to a sharp flick of violet. She'd seen that flicker before. In Eden's archives, violet was the signature of a host once infected, someone who had resisted cognitive override. But no one resisted Velos and lived. Velos wasn't a disease. It was intent, weaponized. A semi-sentient parasite, woven from biological filament and ancient algorithm, designed not to destroy the body, but overwrite the mind. It spoke through memory, subtle at first, dreams, shifts in instinct, then decisions that felt like your own but weren't. Once embedded in the spinal nerve chain, it grew tendrils that mapped your thoughts, mirrored them, then replaced them. Most hosts never noticed the change. They simply agreed more with war, with order, with eradication. Cain had been 8 cycles old when it entered him. Eris discovered the report sealed under 16 layers of plasma-coded encryption, a field log, fractured and incomplete. A child soldier found alone in the ash moors, pupils glowing gold, pulse 150. The medics tried to sedate him. He screamed in ancient dialects not even the priests of fire could translate. No anesthesia worked, no extraction succeeded. So they locked him in a solar chamber, 31 days, no contact. He came out changed, not just alive, victorious. The Velos was gone. No trace remained except for a thin line of ash in his hair and a neural pattern unlike any seen before. Jagged, recursive, unstable. His plasma, once standard red, began to fluctuate in density and heat. It hurt him. Every movement required restraint. Every breath had to be controlled. When Eris compared his genome to hers, something cracked inside her. They shared a node. One fragment of ancient code. Not from Eden, not from near, but older. Hers had never activated, but it was there, embedded across 23 pairs, dormant. She was not immune to Velos. She was compatible. She could receive the parasite signal, interpret it, and silence it without losing herself. No one had seen this kind of dual thread before. It was heresy to the near and blasphemy to the purebloods. The pureblood caste was ancient and brutal. Born from the line of first ignition, they saw themselves as stewards of divine plasma. Anything outside their design was filth. Eris was worse than foreign. She was fusion. They convened in the temple of core flame and called her a virus, a Trojan, a mistake that should never have survived the crash. Cain watched from the shadows, silent. Eris stood before them, no chains, no armor, just a cracked voice and a mind full of questions. "You say I am the infection," she said quietly. "But what if I'm the cure?" They struck at the 8th hour of the 14th cycle, just before the high alignment, when most of the tower's inner security protocols were lowered for the sacred plasma sync, a ritual during which every flame conduit was rebalanced. It was the only time the tower's electromagnetic shielding was partially disabled, a calculated vulnerability, the perfect moment for a cleansing. 3 officers in ceremonial armor, all bearing the sigils of the pureblood lineage, entered under the guise of performing a secondary purity assessment. Eris was in the diagnostic chamber alone, no observers, her wrists still marked with residual electrode burns. One of them, Lieutenant Saron, had hesitated at the threshold. His hand trembled. He had seen Eris with Cain, seen the strange stillness in Cain's plasma when near her. That silence haunted him, so he warned her, not directly, just a single whisper when the others weren't looking. "Move when I say pulse drop." That was all. When the pulse dropped, she moved. Fast. Instinct, not training. The scalpel meant for her spine sank into the metal floor instead. She grabbed the nearest diagnostic stool and slammed it into the second attacker's knee. A sickening crunch. Plasma burst in red lines from his armor, but the third one caught her arm and twisted it back, until a searing beam of light ripped through the air and severed his wrist. Saran. He had turned, but too late. The second attacker, still alive, impaled Saran through the abdomen with a pulse spike before Eris could scream. Blood hit the plasma tile. It sizzled, then evaporated. Saran fell, eyes wide, lips moving without sound. And then Cain arrived, not with guards, alone, unmasked, his chest bare, scales shimmering with fury. He walked into the chamber as if it belonged to him, and it did. The attackers turned, hesitant. One of them knelt, perhaps hoping for mercy. Cain raised his hand. "You shed blood on sacred ground." "No," the attacker gasped. "We cleanse corruption." Cain did not let him finish. His plasma ignited mid-air, formed into a blade of blue heat. One stroke, headless silence. The room stank of scorched bone. The council was watching. A projection hovered above the chamber. His actions were not private. He knew. He didn't care. "This," Cain said, pointing to Eris, "is not corruption. This is consequence. And any who defy me now will burn with the past you so blindly worship." Silence. Then murmurs, across halls, barracks, entire sectors. Some, like General Kaysir and the younger caste scientists, voiced support. They called Eris a bridge, a vector of synthesis. They wanted her genome examined, replicated. If her blood could survive Velos and soften plasma, then she was more than an anomaly. She was salvation. Others screamed heresy. A human wielding divine heat? Madness. The calls for public testing grew louder, and in the center of it all, Eris stood, blood-stained, breathless, her eyes not full of pride but fear, not of death, but of becoming a symbol. The chamber of the burning sigil was older than the tower itself. Carved from meteoric stone and laced with molten circuitry, it sat suspended above the planetary core, connected only by 3 plasma bridges. It was here that Eris was brought, not as a prisoner, not yet as a guest, but as a subject. The hall of the HFY Council had not held a genetic trial in 2 centuries, and never for a human. The rituals were brutal, not violent, but invasive in the way only cold science masquerading as religion could be. She stood barefoot in a glass chamber surrounded by obsidian rings. Above, concentric halos rotated, each one humming with encoded resonance. One misalignment, and her nervous system would be shattered at the atomic level. Around her, 12 counselors sat in judgment, robes lined with flickering plasma threads. At the center, Counselor Thirax, a genetic purist with a mouth like a knife and eyes that had sentenced thousands. He despised her, not for what she was, but for what she made them question. Thirax began the protocol. We will now perform the sequence purge and layer decryption. Subject, foreign hybrid, species origin, Homo sapiens. Expected outcome, confirmation of deviation and contamination. Eris had prepared, not with weapons, with clarity. She memorized every known plasma-reactive gene cluster. She practiced breath control in zero gravity for 17 hours. She'd even tattooed 2 lines of Eden code along her spine, a silent rebellion if they found her dead. The scan began. Tendrils of light wrapped around her limbs, drawing blood without touch. Data pulsed into the chamber's core, then silence, and then chaos. The results didn't confirm deviation. They revealed symmetry. Eris's genome didn't just contain Velos-compatible code. It contained ancestral sequences that matched both near-plasma regulation genes and Velos neural integration threads. She wasn't a mutation. She was a mirror. Only 7 known species had ever held partial compatibility with Velos. All had gone extinct. Most were labeled as myth. Now in Eris, pieces of all of them whispered in harmony. Counselor Vena leaned forward, voice shaking. This pattern, it predates the rift. Thirax slammed his fist on the console. This is fabrication. Impossible. But it wasn't. Kane had seen the readings himself. Her blood stabilized plasma. Her cells could host Velos spores without absorption. It wasn't submission, it was balance. The room split. Some scientists called it a breakthrough. Others called it a disease in disguise, a prophecy, a weapon. But in Kane, something else shifted. A memory surfaced. Not his own, but deeper. A fragment he had buried long ago. A vision whispered by the Velos during his infection. We return not to conquer, but to remind. What if the war was never meant to end? What if the conflict itself was seeded, nurtured by a Velos mind hiding behind lineage and legacy? He began to suspect. Every record, every cycle of destruction and rebuilding, all too precise, too neat. He summoned a data seer, quietly, privately, ordered them to reconstruct the plasma ancestry archives all the way back to the first flame. If truth existed, it would be buried where heat and memory converged, in the genetic dust of the ancestors. Eden's technology was never meant for this. The Mnemosyne interface, a prototype never cleared for field use, was designed to access stored emotional memory via neural resonance, but only between compatible human minds. It required absolute proximity, stable synaptic patterns, and trust. Eris had one of those, maybe 2. But compatibility? With a being whose bloodstream crackled with sentient flame? Still, she activated the device. It was the size of a seed, embedded beneath the skin near her left collarbone. A press and a whisper, and it bloomed. Blue latticework of photonic threads spiraling outward from her spine, searching for cerebral voltage patterns in Kane. The connection was instantaneous and painful. Plasma flared along his arms as his body reacted defensively. Sparks snapped through the air, and 2 guards rushed in, weapons drawn. "Stop this!" one shouted. "She's breaching command neural stability." Kane raised a hand. "Stand down." The air hummed with suppressed fire, his voice quiet. "If she takes something, she gives something." Eris paused. "That's the condition?" He nodded. "You will show me what you see." She agreed. They linked. Her vision shattered, then reformed. Not in words or images, but pressure, memory shaped like heat. She saw through Kane's blood, through the years of fire, of war, of exile, and then deeper, past even his own lifetime. She was not looking at Kane's mind anymore. She was inside something older, coiled in the plasma itself, a shape, a voice. "I have waited, bled through lineages, shaped kings, stirred rage when peace threatened to take root. A consciousness, not chaotic, not mad, patient, strategic, a Velos prime, root mind of the original spore complex. It had never left. When Kane burned his parasite, it hadn't died, it had dispersed. A fragment entered the plasma. A fragment passed into his successors. Memory through energy, intent embedded in evolution. Why war? Eris asked it, or thought it. Because war keeps the strong awake. Peace breeds forgetting. She pulled back, gasping, heart hammering. Her skin steamed with residual plasma. Kane collapsed to one knee. He had seen it too. And then they both turned because someone was watching. General Akron. He stood still, just beyond the lattice glow, hands behind his back. Too still. His plasma never flickered. His pulse non-existent. He had always been loyal. Kane's strategist since the first Purge campaign. Never questioned orders, never showed ambition. Yet the council always aligned with him. Subtle influence, gentle redirects. And never touched directly by war. Akron had advised the Velos cleansing, but never participated. Had spoken against Ares, but never demanded her death. Vena was the first to say it aloud later. He thinks too clean for a man raised in fire. Eris scanned old resonance logs. Akron's vitals were flat during plasma surges. Unnatural. Almost buffered. Someone had filtered his neural outputs. Not once. For years. To confirm infection would require direct psychic exposure. But such exposure risked transmission. Kane clenched his fists. If he is host, then he has been shaping our wars for decades. And Eris whispered, and now he's watching us uncover him. The ritual had been dead for over 500 years, buried in the flame archives, spoken of only in half-mocking hymns by the temple's last breathers. Tum Jin Tin Tu, the celestial judgment, was a rite older than near scripture itself. To the scientists, it was superstition. To the priests, it was heresy forgotten. But Kane invoked it anyway, publicly, without the council's consent. The rite demanded a convergence, plasma, memory, and a living Velos fragment. It was meant to determine not guilt or innocence, but destiny. The belief was simple. When the stars align with flame, they reveal the thread of truth hidden in the subject's core. But the reality? A test so lethal that 9 out of 10 chosen never returned. That's why it was banned. Because once, long ago, it proved that a Nair leader was born from parasite lineage. Kane offered his own blood to activate the star beacon. His energy signature unlocked the chamber's dormant mechanisms. 6 crystal monoliths that spiraled above Eris, now suspended midair, encased in a field of humming ion. The Velos fragment, cultured from a deep chamber containment pod, writhed inside a vial suspended beneath her feet. "You don't have to do this," Kane told her, low before the light began. "I do," Eris said, eyes steady. "This isn't about me anymore." The lights flared. The containment broke. The Velos didn't attack. It drifted, slow like vapor, toward her spine, slipping between her vertebrae. Every Nier in the chamber braced for the moment of possession. Muscles tightening, plasma heating. But Eris didn't scream. Her body shook, then stilled. Her breath faltered, then steadied. The Velos tried to integrate, but it found no resistance. No war, only welcome. Her skin pulsed once with pale blue light. Not red, not violet, blue. No bone cracked. No eyes turned gold. She absorbed it, completely, silently. Kane rose from his seat, eyes locked on hers. His plasma flickered, unsure. "You're not a host," he whispered. "You're a harbor." The chamber broke into chaos. Half the council stood in awe. Councillor Vena wept. Councillor Thyrax stormed out, screaming about false prophecy. But something irreversible had happened. Eris had faced the immortal parasite and changed nothing, except its hunger. Eris fell the moment the ritual ended, not like someone collapsing from pain, but like something unraveling, as if her body remembered a different shape and forgot how to hold the current one. Her eyes closed before she hit the stone. Her breath slowed, then stopped for 8 full seconds. They called it shock. Plasma equilibrium collapse. But inside, Eris was elsewhere. She drifted through a dream that wasn't hers, formed from echo, shaped by flame. She saw a world before the rift, before plasma, before war. A council of beings not near, not human, not velos, but something between. Their skin shimmered with translucent color, their voices harmonic frequencies rather than words. In the center stood a figure, female, pale eyes, silver hair, her face. The ancestor didn't speak, but her presence flooded Eris with memory. This woman had once brokered a pact between two dying species, not through weapons, but by becoming a conduit, a genetic link between warring ideologies. Her sacrifice had prevented extinction, and yet centuries later, the cycle had returned. The pattern had restarted, always Velos, always division, always flame. Then came a final vision, not of war, but of a vessel, orbiting a new star. Inside it, near and human, standing as equals, light pooling from their palms. Peace not imposed, but chosen. Eris awoke with a gasp. Kane was kneeling beside her, hand hovering near her chest, not quite touching. The moment their skin brushed, his plasma flickered, and the red hue melted into blue. The chamber silenced. In near culture, red plasma meant command. Violet meant infection. But blue was undocumented, unclassified, mythical. Ancient temple fragments described it only once, carved on the inner wall of a ruined gate. When flame turns blue, the war forgets its name. Kane pulled back, stunned. "It didn't burn," he whispered. "It listened." For the first time in his life, the heat inside him didn't scream. It sang. Eris met his eyes. "We're not weapons, Kane. We're channels." Together, they began to formulate what had never been dared, a method of interfacing energy, not as domination, but as shared resonance. The Eden text called it core harmony, dismissed as theoretical. But here, between a near flame-born and a human hybrid, it was reality. They called it energy convergence, a process by which different species could blend not only biology, but intent. A new diplomacy, not through words, through shared memory, but not everyone wanted peace. Councillor Thyrax watched from above, his fingers clenched. "Connection is infection," he hissed to Akron beside him. "We end this before it spreads." It began on the 42nd cycle, just after the second moonrise when the planetary magnetic field weakened for its routine shift. The time of least plasma resistance, also the time of greatest vulnerability. That's when Akron moved. With calculated precision, he seized control of the plasma watch, the elite division assigned to secure the tower's core. 5 out of the 9 command spires went dark within 20 minutes. His voice echoed across every channel. "The flamebearer is no longer pure. He bends to alien sympathy, poisoned by human touch. I, General Akron, invoke right of purity. The tower is under my jurisdiction." He had support. Over 200 elite soldiers pledged allegiance. Most were from traditionalist lineages. His message, Kane tainted by a human hybrid, resonated in the lower castes. For a society built on fire and hierarchy, the accusation stung deeper than treason. It was spiritual betrayal. But not all followed. Councillor Vena sent out a counter-transmission, urging loyalty to Kane. Among the Flame Guards, Captain Cillian defied orders and secured Eris's location before the traitors could reach her. Still, the chamber was split. Civil war within the tower was seconds away. Kane, blood still pulsing blue from his last contact with Eris, stood before the inner gates and spoke one line. "I challenge Akron to the right of Loilua." Gasps followed. The Blade of Flame was an ancient duel tradition, one-on-one combat between leaders to resolve a schism. No armies, no interference. Victory meant legitimacy. Death meant silence. Kane refused to spill his people's blood in open war. But this would be personal. They met in the furnace arena. No armor, no plasma enhancement tech, only raw energy and instinct. Akron moved first, ruthless, precise. He wielded flame like a blade, driving Kane back. Kane blocked, parried, endured. The air screamed with heat. The watchers fell silent. Then came the moment. Akron's strike pierced Kane's side, just beneath the ribs. A wound meant to kill. Plasma surged around the blade. But instead of death, came eruption. Kane screamed, not in pain, but release. His blood ignited, not red, but pure blue. A wave of plasma burst outward from his chest in a perfect sphere. The energy didn't burn. It cleansed. Every soldier in the plaza froze. Those loyal to Akron dropped their weapons, staggered, overwhelmed by visions of peace, of memory, of something older than loyalty. Eris, standing across the plaza, was untouched. Wrapped in the blue light, she stood radiant, her skin shimmering like frost on fire. Akron staggered back, eyes wide. "What are you?" he hissed. Kane, bleeding but alive, rose to his feet. "Something your war can't survive." Eris stood before the council with blood still drying at the edge of her sleeve, ribs bound in thermal mesh. Hair singed where Akron's flames had nearly touched her. Yet her posture was straight, her gaze clear. The high hall of flame was dimmed, half of its lights extinguished since the duel. Above, the 12 counselors watched from their elevated rings, faces shadowed by flickering plasma veins embedded in their robes. "I should not be here," she began. "By your laws, by your traditions, by your fear, I should be ash. But I am not." Silence. "I carry a code older than your fear, a bridge, not a weapon. You think purity is strength. But what if strength is the ability to change without breaking?" Her voice didn't rise. It was not a plea. It was a statement, simple, precise. When she finished, the chamber was so quiet even the plasma veins in the floor pulsed louder than breath. Counselor Vena stood. "I vote recognition of her status as sovereign bridge." Counselor Thirax spat on the stone. "She speaks poison." The vote split. 5 for, 5 against, 2 abstained. A stalemate, no verdict. The hall dismissed in silence, its walls heavy with indecision. That night, shadows moved differently. In the outer gardens of the tower, a cloaked figure approached Eris while she rested beside the reflective pool, the only place in the tower without surveillance. Then 2 more, then 5. They emerged one by one from the mist, eyes faintly glowing gold. Not hostile, not submissive, descendants. Velos bonded near who had survived infection through centuries of exile, scattered across remote systems. Rumors had always existed of clans who hid their lineage, passing as lowborns, never rising above caste. Now they came, not to challenge, but to witness. "You've done what none of us could," the tallest said. "You silenced the voice without killing the mind." "Do you want alliance?" Eris asked. "No," he replied. "We want to learn." She looked at them. Same glow in their eyes, same fragments of code in their DNA. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a deviation. She felt like a beginning. They left no names, only coordinates, burned into a leaf of plasma ink. Proof, the Velos were not gone, not fully. Kane appeared hours later, gaunt, limping. His wound from Akron had reopened. Still, he said nothing, only motioned for her to follow. No guards, no witnesses. Just the two of them, moving through the inner corridors of the tower, until they reached a gate neither of them had ever spoken of aloud. The Core Convergence Vault. A forbidden site, sealed since before the Great Division. said to contain the heart of the first near-formed plasma, a memory-reactive chamber once used to blend energy between species in the pre-Rift Age. I need to show you something, Kane said. She hesitated. Why now? Because I finally believe, he answered, and because if we don't go now, they'll bury it again. They entered. No one followed. The vault did not open. It breathed. When Kane placed his palm against the ancient seal, long dead to every cast before him, the metal did not slide apart. It unfurled like muscle, revealing a tunnel of pale luminescence spiraling downward into silence. Eris followed, step by step, her body vibrating in sync with something deeper than sound. They descended into the core of the tower, beyond stone, beyond architecture, into the original chamber constructed before the Near even knew how to record their own names. The Heart of Flame. It was not a room. It was a memory made solid. Walls were liquid metal, layered with frozen plasma currents that pulsed gently with color. Threads of red, violet, and flickering white circled the central sphere, suspended above a pit of pure gravitational stillness. And at the heart of it all, a blank canvas of energy, shaped like a human silhouette. The vault didn't respond to Kane. It responded to her. The sphere stirred as she approached, and in a moment both terrifying and intimate, it peeled open, revealing within it the first pulse of true blue plasma. It didn't shoot upward. It didn't burn. It rose like a question. Kane fell to one knee, not from pain, reverence. Then the voice came. You carry my breath. Eris's vision blurred, not from heat but from recognition. Across the sphere, a figure emerged from the light. Silver hair, eyes like mercury, skin laced with moving glyphs. Valeth. That was the name. The first symbiote. The original Velos intelligence that had shaped the cycle of infection, alliance, and collapse since the pre-Rift era. You are my echo, Veleth said. You were chosen because you were empty enough to hold all that came before. Take my mind, take this system, and reshape it. The offer wasn't seductive. It was logical, efficient. Veleth offered control not by war, but by system override. Evolution via surrender. Eris stepped forward and paused. Kane, watching through the energy mist, didn't speak, but his expression was a cry. She felt it in her spine, and that was why she stopped. I am not your echo, she said. I am the one who ends the voice. Then without ceremony, she turned inward, focused on the origin point of the Velos interface in her mind, the same strand that had anchored the parasite, and ignited it. Blue turned white. She burned the fragment, not physically, psychogenically, through sheer will. The act called mental incineration, a neural cleansing only hypothesized in Eden texts. In doing so, she risked collapsing every memory she had inherited. Kane reached out. You'll lose everything. I know, she whispered, and she did. In the fire, she saw her ancestral map vanish, saw the thousands of lives encoded in her blood drift away like dust. But not all memory died. What remained was choice. When the light faded, she stood alone. Veleth gone, the chamber quiet. Kane rose, stepping beside her. What are you now? He asked. She turned to him, voice soft. Just Eris. When Eris stepped out of the vault, the guards didn't recognize her. Not because her face had changed, though it had subtly, but because she no longer felt like Eris. There was no emotional resonance, no electromagnetic imprint, nothing the plasma reactive sensors could detect. Her presence read as silence. Total, impossible silence. Kane followed, his steps slower, not from injury but from awe. He could sense it. She wasn't entirely human anymore. Her breath was measured but not labored. Her pupils, once ash gray, now held no definable pigment. Not black, not white, just absence. Her heartbeat, barely perceptible, followed no biological rhythm Eden had ever recorded. And the plasma within her no longer glowed. It didn't even shimmer. It waited like breath before a word. Do you feel anything? Kane asked. She tilted her head, then nodded faintly. Not emotion, not pain. Something cleaner, like space between thoughts. She was not possessed, nor elevated. She was emptied, cleansed of ancestral burdens, Velos code, and even Eden legacy. A new synthesis, not a hybrid, not a bridge, a true first. And Cain, without speaking further, raised his palm to her chest. The heart imprint was not a ceremonial gesture. It was a dangerous, almost forbidden connection ritual used by early Nier to permanently bind their flame to another. Not mating, not romance. It was deeper, a merging of cognitive essence, plasma logic, and inherited instinct. Their hands met. No sound. Then a breath. Simultaneous. One. Their minds touched and neither resisted. Cain felt her thoughts like wind through heat. Her doubts, her choices, her self-incineration. She felt his rage, his legacy of battle, the ache of commanding silence. They felt everything the other had never dared speak. And then, a flicker, a future. Not prophecy, just possibility. Children not born, but cultivated in convergence zones. Flame used not to scorch, but to bond. Velos remnants drifting harmless, stripped of will. Stations rebuilt not for conquest, but communion. As the imprint deepened, their bodies pulsed with twin harmonics. Not fusion, interference, perfect and stable. And from their center, light, not red, not violet, not blue. White-green, the color of silence given shape. The energy wave burst outward like a heart exploding across the stars. It shattered the latent Velos frequency nets embedded across near systems. In the war sectors of the outer ring, entire battlegrounds went dark. Plasma-based weaponry failed mid-fire. Velos influence shut down. Parasites collapsed inside their hosts without pain, without resistance. Like exiles surrendering to rest. On over 17 worlds, skies shimmered with a hue never recorded. Pilots reported hallucinations of warmth. Elders wept without knowing why. Children in low-born quarters drew spirals on the ground, whispering names they'd never heard. The galactic plasma field responded, shifted. It no longer followed the rhythms set by ancient manipulation. It now danced around a new center, a convergence point created not by war, but by will. Cain and Eris stood at its center, and somewhere, deep in the silent dark between systems, the last living fragment of Velos flickered once, and went dark. The vessel was once a warship. Tarek's Fang, a dreadnought-class plasma carrier capable of leveling orbitals in minutes, had served under Cain's command during the siege of Ralverna. Now its teeth were stripped, its heat shielding repurposed, and its core reactor transformed into a harmonic plasma field, stable, neutral, and open to all frequencies. It was no longer a weapon. It was the Accord Spire, the first multi-species diplomatic station in the near Seta sector. Stretching over 3 kilometers from hull to hull, the ship-turned station hovered near the convergence fault line where Eris and Cain had triggered the white-green surge. Engineers from Eden, plasma architects from the reformed Nier caste, and biosympath scientists from formerly exiled Velos, linked clans worked side by side. No caste ranks, no obedience codes, only objectives, integration, autonomy, and harmonic communication. The new plasma Velos tech no longer suppressed will. Instead, it translated intent. Misunderstanding, once the fuel of war, was rendered obsolete by fields that could feel truth across species. Disputes could be dissolved by clarity, not power. Not every species accepted the invitation. The Nakar, a crystalline intelligence race from the Helix fold, refused on grounds of emotional contamination. Others, like the Grelt Confederacy, watched warily from the dark, unconvinced. But across 14 systems, a shift began. The Treaty of Convergent Flame was signed in orbit of near Seta, not in blood but in resonance, each ambassador imprinting a pulse pattern into the central vault. No genetic lines were recognized. The term pureblood was struck from all official Nier doctrine. In its place, interpulse identity, a designation based on energy harmony, not origin. Thirax and several council remnants protested, calling it dilution of sacred fire. They were offered amnesty, not punishment. Most declined. Fewer still returned. Word of the treaty spread fast, not through propaganda, but stories. recordings of the moment Eris silenced Velos, the duel where Cain bled blue, the stillness when armies felt peace instead of orders. Eden's education networks adapted quickly. Hollow lessons were created for children. One lesson featured a simple phrase: conflict is noise, harmony is power. Eris and Cain became myth. Their image, hands joined, flames spiraling in white-green helix, became the seal of the accord. Stations began carving their silhouette into entry gates. Starships named their cores Eris Chambers and Cain Halls. Songs were written in dialects neither of them spoke, yet somehow knew. And yet they didn't stay. Eris declined all leadership roles. Symbols don't govern, she said. They remind. Cain, too, stepped away from command. They vanished beyond the edge of mapped plasma routes into the unfiltered dark, saying only, "There are older echoes yet." But they left something behind. A girl on the station born from a lowborn Near and a former Eden scientist lit her first plasma thread by humming, not screaming. The flame that rose from her palm, white with a hint of green, she left without ceremony. One moment Eris stood at the heart of a galactic awakening, envoys seeking her counsel, her image cast across treaty halls, her voice cited in interspecies curriculum, and the next she vanished. No farewell, no declarations. Only a simple message, logged in the Accord Spire's memory bank. The flame does not need a keeper once it learns not to burn. See, she chose the outer ring of Virel's reach, an asteroid habitat used by early Eden terraformers now long abandoned. Under a new name, Lyra Venn, she became a quiet archivist, cataloging forgotten dialects and mythic memory scripts. Her home was sparse, walls etched with fragments of plasma code and old Eden poetry. To the rare traders who passed through, she was just a translator. Some noticed her eyes, colorless but calm, and wondered, but no one asked. Perhaps no one dared. She still carried Cain's resonance, not as data, not as grief, as a quiet presence, a shadow that never cast weight. Sometimes when she reached too deep into old text, she'd feel it, a warm breath across her back, like a blade unsheathed gently in the dark. Cain, for his part, had never returned. He departed on the 25th cycle, leaving only one instruction: let them remember peace without needing to see it. His ship, a single-pilot relic from the pre-Flame Wars, was last seen heading beyond the CERN expanse. After that, silence. Rumors grew as they tend to. Merchant fleets claimed to see red plasma signatures blinking like beacons in dead sectors. Pilots whispered of a cloaked silhouette intervening in skirmishes before disappearing. Some said he was dead. Others believed he was seeking the last Velos node, the one fragment still resisting peace. But Eris knew. He had become a watcher, not of war, but of relapse, waiting in the dark to strike only if the fire returned with hunger. Decades later, on a drifting fragment near the collapsed Velos archive, scavengers found an etched alloy plate embedded in stone. The words were neither Near nor Eden, but a fusion dialect. It read, "Power does not belong to those who rule. It belongs to those who choose to change." The first to translate it was a child born of three lineages, Near, Eden, and Velos host. She carried no title, only a question: what next? That quote, passed from voice to voice, became the cornerstone of a movement, young minds refusing inheritance of old wars, choosing instead to harmonize dissonance. In the centuries that followed, as stars dimmed and others flared anew, those words echoed louder than any conquest. In the end, it was not fire or silence that changed the galaxy. It was the decision not to burn. There are no monuments in the place where Eris disappeared. No grand tomb for Cain, no statues cast in crystal flame or etched in orbit. Only quiet stories passed hand to hand, planet to planet. And yet, across systems, even those who never saw them remember the feel of that shift. Like the moment air changes before a storm, not destructive, but cleansing. Some say Eris became a myth, a name whispered by those caught between empires. Others believe she still writes, her words hidden in the margins of diplomatic codes, her thoughts buried inside language algorithms no one has fully deciphered. Cain, they say, became something else entirely. not a man. A threshold, a last spark, held in the cold, just in case. But more important than their fate is the void they left behind, a void that did not collapse but stabilized. It became a center, a place not of power, but of balance. For centuries, children would learn to light plasma threads not to harm, but to understand. The blue-green helix became a universal sign for harmony across divergence. And deep in the oldest archives of the Accord, there exists one file, flagged origin unknown, encrypted in a language no longer spoken. Its translation is simple, only one phrase. We are not defined by what made us. We are defined by what we choose to become.